The human arrived at the widow's estate during the second reign of Verdun Prime, which, as the locals like to remind offworlders, was acid-tolerant but not human-tolerant. Still, the man trudged through it, his old synthetic coat pitted with scars of earlier storms and stubbornness. He didn't look like much, tall, lean, and tired, the usual human export to the edges of the galaxy. His boots squelched as he approached the estate gate, a shimmering membrane that hummed in disapproval. "Identify purpose," the gate demanded, in a voice so polite it sounded passive-aggressive. "Work," he said, wiping rain from his eyes. "I heard the lady of the house was hiring." The membrane pulsed once, uncertain. "Specify labor classification." "Anything with pay," he replied. "Preferably legal. But I'm negotiable." There was a long pause. Then the gate sighed, which was odd for something without lungs. "Enter. The widow enjoys variety." He stepped through, muttering under his breath. "That's not ominous at all." The house itself looked like it had grown out of grief, vast, beautiful, and slightly decayed. Vines coiled around crystalline windows, light pooled in melancholy blues. Inside, alien artistry mixed with human clutter, the unmistakable sign of someone trying to remember a species they once loved or lost. He barely had time to take it in before she appeared, tall, violet-skinned, elegant in the way that made humans feel like smudges on existence. Her 4 eyes studied him, and he had the peculiar feeling of being scanned, measured, and pitted all at once. "You're human," she said, as though announcing a disappointing weather forecast. "Most days," he replied. "Depends on the coffee situation." Her expression didn't change, but one of her secondary eyes twitched, a sign of amusement, if his translator was right. "You've come for work?" "Yes, ma'am." "Manual, domestic, emotional. I don't discriminate." The widow tilted her head, studying him with that unreadable alien grace. "You are forward. Most humans apologize for existing." "I tried that once," he said. "Didn't help with the rent." Her lips curved, almost a smile, but sharper. "What's your name, worker?" "Jonah." "Jonah." She said it like a taste she wasn't sure she liked. "I am Lady Siravel. My late mate perished during the siege of Arda 7. Since then, the estate has required upkeep. You understand what that entails?" He nodded. "Cleaning, fixing, lifting, pretending to care about noble politics, sure." A pause stretched between them, filled with the gentle sound of alien rain and human awkwardness. "Tell me, Jonah," Sira said, her voice softening. "Why would a human travel halfway across the galaxy to scrub the floor of a widow's home?" He hesitated. The easy lies came first: money, work, escape. But something in her gaze disarmed him. "Because nobody else wanted me," he said finally. "And I figured that's mutual ground." Her eyes, all 4 of them, blinked slowly. "Honesty," she murmured. "Unfashionable, but refreshing." She gestured toward a chair carved from something that looked like petrified silk. He sat carefully, half expecting it to insult his posture. "You are aware," she continued, "that my species views employment as intimate. A worker in my home is not simply labor. They are part of the structure of my life. My late mate handled such duties." Jonah frowned. "Handled? Like, emotionally or?" Her antennae twitched. "Both. Emotional handling is considered part of maintenance." He tried to smile, unsure if she was serious. "So you need someone handy with tools and conversation?" "Handy with affection," she corrected. He choked slightly. "Affection. That's new on a resume." Sira's tone turned dry. "You humans are notoriously fragile without context. Do not misunderstand me. I do not seek your mating rituals. I require companionship, guidance, presence." She leaned closer, her voice lowering. "I require a father." He blinked. "A father. For my offspring," she clarified. "The estate requires a stabilizing paternal figure. Socially. Bureaucratically. The planetary registry refuses widow exemptions for juvenile development without one. Jonah blinked again. You're telling me you don't need a worker, you need paperwork. And emotional scaffolding, she added firmly. The hatchling requires a role model. The Galactic Code insists it must be a living being with moral irregularities. He rubbed his temples. So basically, a bad example? Precisely. He laughed then, a short, human sound that startled her. You're telling me you posted a job listing for help, and what you actually want is a father figure to keep the government off your back? Correct. Though the term father is cultural translation. In my tongue, it means unpredictable nurturing chaos. He grinned. Yeah, that's father enough. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You mock. I live. She studied him for a long time, then said, You'll do. Wait, that's it? You're hiring me as your surrogate co-parent? Temporary, she said. Probationary. One cycle. If you survive the bureaucracy and the child, you may stay. He exhaled, somewhere between relief and disbelief. I'm not exactly father material. Her lips curved again. You are human. That is qualification enough. The rain thickened outside, painting their silence with steady rhythm. Somewhere deep in the house, a soft, chirping sound echoed, a child's laughter, high and alien and curious. Sarah turned toward it, then back to him. You will meet her tomorrow. She has not spoken since her father's death. If you can make her laugh. Then I'm hired? Then perhaps you can stay. Jonah leaned back in the chair, rain still dripping from his sleeves. He didn't know whether to laugh or run. Lady Sarah, he said finally, I came here looking for a job. Not a family. Her gaze softened, just a flicker. The galaxy rarely gives us what we seek. It gives us what we can survive. He met her eyes, all of them, and smiled faintly. That's the most honest job interview I've ever had. Sarah rose, regal and distant again. Rest. The estate will assign you quarters. Tomorrow you begin parenting. As he stood, the house lights dimmed to match the alien twilight. He followed her down the corridor, past portraits that seemed to watch him, past walls humming with grief. Somewhere, he swore he heard a child giggle, or maybe the house itself laughed. Jonah couldn't tell which was worse. Morning on Verdun Prime looked like dawn filtered through a bruise. Pale purple light slid across the horizon, and Jonah woke to the gentle vibration of a cleaning drone trying to steal his blanket. I'm awake, he muttered. The drone emitted a polite chime that somehow sounded judgmental and zipped away. His room was absurdly ornate, half shrine, half museum of grief. The furniture shimmered with organic patterns that responded to touch. The air smelled faintly of old incense and disinfectant. There were no windows, only living panels that projected sky simulations. Every few seconds, one flickered to reveal the real outside, acid rain beating against a shimmering dome. Jonah dressed, ran a hand through his stubborn hair, and followed the sound of faint laughter down the corridor. Sarah was already there, poised at the end of the dining hall, her long fingers tracing holographic reports. She looked like someone carved from poise and sadness. Good morning, Lady Sarah, Jonah said. Her upper eyes glanced at him. Her lower pair remained fixed on the data streams. You are punctual. A promising sign for chaos. Yeah, he said dryly. I set my alarm to galactic disapproval. Works every time. That earned him a flicker of amusement, a subtle twitch of her upper lip. Then she gestured toward the far end of the hall. She is waiting. Jonah turned and saw a small creature, smaller than he expected. The child, the hatchling, stood on a stool, staring suspiciously at a cup of nutrient jelly. She had her mother's violet skin, though lighter, like dusk diluted with curiosity. Her eyes, only two so far, were enormous. And wary. Morning, Jonah said, crouching slightly. You must be the boss around here. No response. Just that silent stare, as if she were cataloging his existence molecule by molecule. She doesn't speak, Sarah said softly. Not since. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Jonah nodded, then picked up a spoon and poked the jelly. It jiggled with a sad little wobble. He made a face. That's either breakfast or a biohazard. A tiny, involuntary sound escaped the child, the faintest squeak of a laugh. Sarah froze, her 4 eyes widening. Jonah grinned. Ah, confirmation. We've got life signs. The child looked at him again, more curious than afraid now. Jonah leaned closer, whispering conspiratorially. Between you and me, I've eaten worse. Once had coffee made by a centipede with a philosophy degree. That did it. She giggled, a strange, melodic sound like bubbles underwater. Sarah inhaled sharply. Her gaze darted to Jonah, unreadable. You've managed in minutes what healers failed to do in months. Jonah shrugged. I'm naturally unprofessional. Sarah studied him. She laughs at unpredictability. My people suppress emotion for discipline. She is defective. Or advanced, Jonah countered. Depends on how you define survival. Sarah looked at him long enough that it bordered on uncomfortable. Then she turned away, pretending to review her holograms again. Continue your bonding. The child tugged at Jonah's sleeve, her fingers surprisingly warm. He smiled down at her. What's your name, little one? Sarah answered without looking up. Her name is Velen. It means small echo of sorrow. Jonah blinked. Lovely. Very cheerful. Sarah's antennae twitched. Our culture values truth over comfort. Well, Jonah said, ruffling the girl's soft hair. Humans value comfort over sanity, so maybe we balance out. The child laughed again, louder this time. Sarah turned, one upper eye betraying a glimmer of something that might have been gratitude, though she buried it beneath her usual poise. Later that day, Jonah learned that parenting here came with a manual the size of a planetary charter. Entire sections were devoted to tone regulation, pheromone discipline, and the ethics of bedtime storytelling. He skimmed it, then closed it with a sigh. Lady Sarah, he said, catching her. In the garden dome. This parenting book is less about raising a child and more about preventing emotional combustion. Correct, she replied without irony. Our young are highly impressionable. Jonah chuckled. So are ours. Only difference is we embrace the combustion part. Sarah gave him a look of mild horror. You encourage chaos? Not on purpose, he said. It's just how we keep from dying of boredom. She tilted her head, intrigued despite herself. Explain. He pointed to the sky, where acid rain streaked against the dome like melting glass. Humans don't live long enough to control everything. So we improvise. Laugh in the wrong moments. Love the wrong people. It's how we keep from turning into machines. Her gaze softened. My people believe control is what separates us from chaos. Jonah smiled faintly. And humans believe chaos is what separates us from extinction. They stood in silence for a while, watching the rain. Velen chased glowing bugs across the dome's moss floor, squealing when they blinked out of reach. Her laughter echoed faintly, a sound so alive it hurt. Finally, Sarah said, almost to herself, My mate was not like you. He was efficient. Predictable. His presence made the world quiet. Jonah glanced at her. And me? She hesitated. You make the world loud. He laughed softly. That's humanity for you. We're the universe's static. That night, after Velen fell asleep in a cocoon-like cradle that pulsed with soft blue light, Jonah lingered in the hall. He stared at the portraits, Sarah and her late mate, regal and still. The kind of beauty that made humans feel temporary. Sarah joined him silently. You stare at him, she said, her voice a whisper. Trying to see what she lost, Jonah admitted. Trying to understand what I'm replacing. You cannot replace him. I know. He looked at her. But maybe I can help her remember laughter instead of silence. Sarah's expression shifted, something fragile beneath all the grace. Laughter is inefficient. It serves no survival purpose. Neither does grief, Jonah said gently. But we do it anyway. She studied him for a long time before replying. Humans are illogical creatures. Thank you, he said with mock solemnity. We take pride in that. When he turned to leave, she called after him softly. Jonah, you said you came because no one wanted you. That was untrue. He stopped. Was it? Yes, she said quietly. You simply have not met the one who does. He met her gaze, unsure whether she was speaking about herself, her daughter, or something else entirely. But her tone lingered, like rain refusing to fade from stone. As he walked back to his quarters, the estate hummed faintly, alive with alien technology and the first fragile echoes of human laughter. Somewhere behind him, Sarah stood by the child's cradle, listening to the sound of her daughter breathing, and realizing that, for the first time in months, the house no longer felt like a tomb. By the third week, Jonah had become a rumor. Verdun Prime was the kind of world where gossip spread faster than radiation leaks, and just as toxic. Word of the human male cohabiting with Lady Vel raced through noble circles like scandalized wildfire. The idea of a Terran, a creature known for eating fermented fungi and wearing sarcasm like armor, serving as domestic co-parent to an aristocratic widow was, to the locals, practically an act of cosmic rebellion. Sarah pretended not to notice. Jonah didn't pretend at all. He loved it. At breakfast, over what passed for coffee, it glowed faintly and smelled like anxiety. Jonah read the latest headlines aloud from his holotab. Widow of Arda 7 seen laughing with Terran male. Has decorum finally collapsed? Wow, they make it sound like a disaster movie. Sarah, elegant as ever, stirred her nutrient tea without looking up. The local press thrives on collapse. It assures them the universe still functions as expected. He grinned. And here I thought we were improving their culture. You are destabilizing it, she said calmly. There's a difference. Across the table, little Velen giggled, smearing breakfast paste across her face like war paint. Jonah offered her a napkin. She declined proudly. Sarah sighed, the faintest roll of her secondary eyes. Your influence grows. Call it evolution, Jonah said, helping the girl form bubbles with her drink straw. Humans are contagious. Later that morning, the estate's serenity was interrupted by a visitor, one of those bureaucratic types whose clothing screamed regulation first, morality second. The man, or being, his species was mostly cartilage and smugness, arrived in a floating sphere, surrounded by dated drones. Sarah met him at the entrance hall, composed as ever. Jonah stood beside her, wearing what he hoped looked like a formal shirt. It was actually just cleaner than usual. The official inclined his elongated head. Lady Vel, he said in a tone that suggested admiration was taxable. And human. Jonah said, extending a hand. The bureaucrat stared at it as though it were a biological hazard. I represent the Department of Familial Stability, the official continued. We are conducting routine verification of paternal presence in widow-led estates. Sarah inclined her head gracefully. Of course. How may we assist your verification? The bureaucrat blinked. We will require demonstration of functional bonding, emotional, educational, and physical cohabitation indicators. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Physical cohabitation indicators? The bureaucrat adjusted his monocle implant. Shared living space. Synchronized sleep cycles. Evidence of emotional unity. Sarah's expression froze, halfway between diplomacy and homicide. You are suggesting my household requires surveillance? Merely documentation, he replied smoothly. There have been anomalies in cross-species arrangements. The law insists on proof of authenticity. Jonah chuckled. So basically, you're here to make sure we're not faking a family. The bureaucrat's lips twitched in distaste. Precisely. Sarah's voice turned sharp. My grief is not a performance. Jonah stepped forward before the situation could combust. Look, pal. You want proof we're a family? Fine. Ask the kid who taught her to burp the alphabet. The bureaucrat blinked, confused. Burp? primitive sound emission. Sarah explained flatly, pinching the bridge of her nose. Human humor. Velen, apparently sensing the moment, peeked from behind Jonah's leg and emitted a loud, gleeful belch that rattled the drones. Jonah grinned. Exhibit A. Sarah covered her face with one elegant hand, muttering something in her native tongue that sounded suspiciously like a curse. The bureaucrat's drones beeped uncertainly. Emotional synchronization confirmed. One announced. Unorthodox indicators detected. Unorthodox. Sarah repeated, her voice dripping venom. That is your term for laughter now. Laughter, the bureaucrat said primly, is not listed under sanctioned familial markers. Jonah folded his arms. Maybe it should be. The official regarded him coolly. Human philosophy is irrelevant to galactic standardization. Jonah smirked. Yeah, that's what they said about love, art, and hygiene, and look how that turned out. Even Sarah couldn't suppress a small smile. Enough, she said. You have your data. Leave us. The bureaucrat inclined his head stiffly. As you wish, Lady Vel. Expect further correspondence once your case is reviewed. His sphere rose and drifted out, leaving the faint scent of disinfected judgment behind. When the door sealed, Jonah exhaled. Remind me again why the galaxy needs those people? Sarah turned toward him, still watching the empty doorway. Because chaos terrifies them. And you, Jonah, are chaos with a heartbeat. He smirked. Flattered, but that sounded like an insult wrapped in poetry. It was both. They shared an amused silence, broken only by Velen proudly declaring, Burp. Again. Jonah laughed. See? Education at work. Sarah's gaze softened. She is happy. Yeah, Jonah said quietly. She is. That night the estate glowed in warm colors, a sign the house AI had registered. Stable emotional conditions. Sarah sat by the indoor pond, watching bioluminescent fish trace patterns in the water. Jonah joined her, holding 2 glasses of Terran wine substitute. You're drinking algae, he said, handing her one. She sniffed it delicately. You humans ferment everything. It's our form of diplomacy. They drank in companionable silence. Outside, acid rain pattered against the dome like distant applause. Jonah, she said suddenly, I spoke to the registry this evening. The bureaucrat was correct about one thing. The child's stability requires formal declaration of paternal authority. He frowned. You mean more paperwork? More than paperwork. She turned to face him fully. A legal bond. He blinked. You're asking me to assume guardianship. Officially. Jonah stared at her, half laughing. Sarah, that's not a small ask. She met his eyes, all 4 of them. I do not ask lightly. The law does not permit me to raise her alone. But with your name attached to the file, she remains here. With me. He swirled the algae wine, considering. You sure this isn't just a bureaucratic workaround? It began as one. She admitted softly. But it has become something else. He looked at her then, really looked. The poise, the restraint, the quiet ache beneath her words. He realized that her laughter, rare as it was, had started to sound less brittle. You trust me with that? He asked. I trust what you've brought into this house, she said. Noise. Warmth. Imperfection. Jonah chuckled softly. That's a poetic way to say trouble. It's a human way, she replied. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with meaning neither dared name. Finally, Jonah exhaled. All right. I'll do it. But under protest, and only because the kid's better at sarcasm than most adults I know. Sarah's smile, brief, genuine, unguarded, was reward enough. Then it is settled. As they sat there, the pond lights flickered to reflect stars beyond the dome. Jonah wondered how he'd ended up in this absurd, beautiful mess, a broke human on a world that hated chaos, being asked to become the very thing chaos needed most, family. He raised his glass. To bureaucracy, he said. The universe's dumbest matchmaker. Sarah clinked her glass against his. And to humanity, she said softly. Its most dangerous contagion. The toast hung in the air like a promise either of them could yet understand. The hearing was scheduled for the 9th cycle of Verdun Prime, a day locals considered unlucky for unions and blessed for funerals. Bureaucrats, Jonah thought grimly, had a sense of irony even gods would envy. The Family Stability Tribunal wasn't a courthouse so much as an architectural apology, all marble silence and thinly veiled contempt. The chamber glowed with sterile light, and the air smelled faintly of disinfected judgment. At the front sat 3 arbiters, identical, expressionless beings bred for neutrality. Their eyes were mirrors. Their hearts, Jonah suspected, were tax-deductible. Sarah Vell stood beside him, regal and unflinching. Her formal robes shimmered in violet hues that matched the faint luminescence of her skin. Velen clung to her hand, wearing a miniature version of the same robes, complete with ceremonial shoulder frills that looked like wings. Jonah, of course, wore a borrowed suit that fit like bureaucracy itself, too tight, too honest. An arbiter's voice echoed through the hall. Case 743A. Widow Sarah Vell petitioning for continuation of guardianship rights under Clause 42, cross-species coparental stability. Translation: prove you're a real family, or the kid gets reassigned. Sarah inclined her head gracefully. Acknowledged. Jonah, ever the diplomat, gave a small wave. Hey! A few officials flinched, as if hey were a declaration of war. The arbiter's mirrored eyes flickered. Human Jonah! You claim paternal role in this arrangement. Explain your contribution to the child's emotional and moral development. Jonah straightened his jacket, coughed once, and said, Well, she laughs now. A collective murmur spread through the hall. The arbiter blinked, once, mechanically. Clarify laughs. You know, Jonah said, smiling faintly. Spontaneous joy. Involuntary sound. The thing that happens when life stops making sense but you love it anyway. Another arbiter leaned forward. And you find this desirable? Essential, Jonah replied. Without it, you just survive. You don't live. They conferred in hushed tones, clearly in use to metaphysics. Humor, one muttered. Unquantifiable emotional reflex. Sarah stepped forward then, her voice cool but edged with quiet fire. The child's well-being cannot be measured by your charts. Since Jonah's arrival, she has spoken, laughed, and learned to disobey bedtime. She feels. That is growth no machine or mandate could provide. The first arbiter tilted its head. Our records show your species discourages emotional volatility. Are you implying this human has improved your child through chaos? Yes, Sarah said simply. Through chaos, she found stability. Jonah couldn't help grinning. That's humanity's brand motto. A ripple of disapproval passed through the audience. Several noble delegates whispered furiously. The idea that laughter, affection, and imperfection might count as moral progress was almost heretical. Then, to everyone's surprise, Velen stepped forward. Small, trembling, but defiant. She tugged at the arbiter's robe with one tiny hand. When it bent down to acknowledge her, she whispered, He makes Mama smile. For a moment, a rare, fleeting moment, even the arbiters went silent. Sarah froze, breath catching audibly. Jonah blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Velen looked up at him, earnest and proud. Mama used to talk to walls. Now she talks to him. He's loud. The courtroom erupted in confused murmurs. One of the arbiters raised a hand for silence. Emotional dependency confirmed, it said, tone unreadable. Jonah chuckled under his breath. That's one way to phrase love. The lead arbiter adjusted its collar. Human Jonah. You seem unorthodox. Idea that laughter might be legally beneficial. Politicians panicked. Philosophers rejoiced. Sarah handled it with her usual grace, which was to say, she ignored everyone. Jonah handled it by teaching Velen how to make mud out of imported Terran soil, which scandalized the House AI. One evening, as stars burned coldly above the dome, Jonah and Sarah sat again by the pond, the same place where the proposal had first taken shape. The silence between them was easy now, no longer strained by grief or caution. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Regret what?" "Letting chaos into your life." He smiled. "You say that like I had a choice. Chaos comes with being human." She tilted her head, studying him. "And being human means—" He thought for a moment. "It means caring too much about things we can't control. It means breaking the rules just to prove we're alive. It means—" He paused, searching her face. "It means this." Before he could ruin the moment with words, Velen came running down the path, her laughter echoing through the garden like a challenge to the stars themselves. Sarah watched her daughter and whispered, "Then perhaps humanity has something worth learning from." Jonah looked at her, eyes soft. "You already have." For once, she didn't argue. The child reached them, breathless and glowing with mischief. "Mama! Jonah! Look!" She held up a small creature, a glowing insect, harmless but brilliant, its wings reflecting every color of the spectrum. Sarah smiled. "Beautiful." Velen grinned proudly. "It laughed." Jonah blinked. "Wait, bugs laugh here?" "Only when happy," Sarah said. He chuckled. "Guess it caught it from us." The alien widow gazed at her daughter, then at him, and said softly, "No. We caught it from you." The dome lights dimmed as night deepened, the stars glittering beyond the rain, sharp and infinite, but somehow closer now. In the silence that followed, a truth older than empires whispered between them, that love and humanity's stubborn warmth could unsettle even the coldest corners of the galaxy. And as Velen danced under the glowing rain, Jonah realized the universe had played its cruelest, kindest joke, that he had come here seeking work and found something far more impossible, a family that had never needed fixing, only reminding that it could still laugh. He glanced at Sarah. "You know," he said, "for an alien widow who hired me by accident, you're not half bad at this whole family thing." She smirked. "And for a human who came begging for work, you are remarkably persistent." "Occupational hazard," he replied. "We survive by accident and stay by choice." Her hand brushed his, a fleeting contact, warm and electric. "Then stay," she said quietly. He smiled, the kind that held both sorrow and peace. "I was planning to." Above them, the rain shimmered into starlight, or maybe it was laughter reflected from the dome. Either way, Verdun Prime would never be quiet again. Because somewhere, on a world that once worshipped silence, a human had taught the stars how to laugh.